So, welcome back to Atomic Geekdom. It is author interview time again, and we have a returning guest. I've listed his credits, all kinds of credits. Multi-award winner, Bram Stoker, New York Times best-selling author, and he is back with the latest Joe Ledger the late. It would help if I could talk. I swear I talk on mic a lot. The latest in the Joe Ledger Rogue Team International series, Red Empire. It's our pal Jonathan Maberry.
Hi guys, Matt, Jenny, it's
Hello.
good to be back.
Good to have
Yes.
you.
Good to have you. So, I know we're going to talk about Red Empire and everything, but this is something I've been making. I was just talking to Jenny about this before you got on, and I'm making an effort to ask more people this. Jonathan, what are you reading?
Oh, actually, right now I'm actually listening to Red Empire on audio.
Oh,
When
okay.
when my books come out, I like to listen to them on audio because it gives me it helps refresh me because I'm writing the new Joe Ledger book now,
Hmm.
so it helps refresh me. And also I really enjoy Ray Porter's performance, but
Hmm.
also it hearing my final edited voice, the version of my writing that goes through the editing process and is finally published. The more I become familiar with that, the easier it is to write in that with the next book. Saves a lot of steps.
Oh, yeah, good point.
Yeah. The book I just finished, however, was uh, Toxic Prey, one of the John Sanford Lucas Davenport novels,
Oh, okay.
and I love that series of books. And I'm just about to dive in after this is done. The latest James Lee Burke, also a mystery series, the Dave Robichaux series. I think it's like the 30th book in the series. I've been following it forever. He's one of those writers that I'll buy whatever he writes as soon as it comes out. I'll grab it and and enjoy it. I've been following his work since I think since forever. Uh,
Oh,
30
excellent.
books is unless he's writing them weekly, that's a trek.
yeah, he's been at this for a long time. He's an older gentleman, and he's written probably 60, 70 books, and I think I've read them all.
Wow.
Um,
Nice.
there are a few writers that Joe Lansdale. John Sanford, Christopher Golden. There's a few writers who, when their books come out, I have to get them right away. I mean, like,
I,
bang, right away.
I get that totally. And I'm making more of an effort to ask people that when I know that they're people that read simply because I'm trying to broaden myself out. I spend a lot of time reading an awful lot of horror and I love horror, but I'm like, I have to read more stuff and
Yeah.
lately I've been just like, what are you reading? Is it good? What is it about? What genre is it? I want to know.
And it's funny, it's always important to read outside comfort zones. I got advice from that from so many people when I was younger. And I write mainly thrillers and horror and science fiction, but I
Hmm.
read a ton of mysteries. I read romance, I read westerns, I read action, I read just about everything. And I read poetry every day.
Yeah.
So all of that helps broaden my understanding of what writing and good storytelling is like. And as both a reader and a writer, I find it incredibly useful and entertaining.
Yeah, I've gotten back more into the I when I was younger, I really loved mystery. I read, all of Sherlock Holmes, I've read a bunch of Agatha Christie. I've read, that kind of I was into mystery when I was younger and then
Yeah.
I fell out of it for quite a while. And more recently I've been like, man, I've just been in the mood for really good mystery lately.
Yeah.
So,
And I go through phases. Like when I was leading up to writing the Kagan trilogy, I read a ton of fantasy. I mean, going all the way back to Sword and Sorcery up through the more, contemporary epic and high fantasy. When I was writing the Monk novel Ink, which dealt with Monk Addison, I was reading a lot of urban fantasy, Jim
mhm.
Butcher, Simon Green, a few others. So I often read in the genre I'm writing too, because I want to see how it's done, how it's done well, not to copy, but to be influenced by
Yeah.
quality, because you want to get a sense of it. And also it helps you get a clearer bead on who the demographic is for that particular book. And you want to make sure that you are respecting the demographic without pandering to them, but
Mhm.
also without in any way, insulting them.
Yeah.
So, reading is great. Um,
Yes, I
as
agree.
you can see, I have books. I have
Yeah.
books everywhere. I have bookshelves in every room of my house.
Yes, I have none in this room I'm in right now. I've been working on an in-home library in the next room over, so I totally get it.
Well,
So,
half of the books behind me are either comics I've written, which is up there.
hmm
Um, n- Everything on this side are anthologies I'm in. There's about 200 of those. And the rest is either graphic novels or research books. And then in the living room, I have two big bookcases of my fiction that I've written, and originals and foreign editions.
Yep.
Uh, and just stuff everywhere. When I moved from Pennsylvania to San Diego, I actually gave away 15,000 books. I think I
Wow.
have regrown that collection by quite a bit.
It's part of business.
Hey,
If California
it's
ever
not
does,
hoarding if it's books, it's
that's
business.
right. And if California ever does sink into the sea, it'll be because of the weight of books. I'm just saying.
There you go. It's definitely a struggle. Like I'm a part of way too many book clubs, so I always have like the arcs that I'm reading to
Mhm.
review and such. Then I have the books that I want to read. Then I have the book club books. Then I have the graphic novel books.
Yep.
And Matt and I were talking about it. It always has like an audio book for like when we're working, a
hmm
book for when we're going to bed,
Yep.
all that. But what we were talking about earlier, book clubs are such a great one too because they'll somebody will throw out a book that you would never want to pick. You're like, that's not my type of story. And it'll
Mhm.
end up being one of the best ones that you've
hmm
read. Like
Yeah.
this month, we read Double Indemnity, which I'd never read before. And I was just excited because it's like 100 pages. I was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like, this one's an easy
Novels were
one.
shorter back then.
Yeah, yeah, but
Mhm.
it was such an enjoyable book because it's going through old Hollywood and like traveling into Glendale and such. And I'm like, I'm a Burbank girl, so I'm like, I recognize the things. It's
Yeah.
such a great community and always always
Well,
amped for when somebody gets a new suggestion.
love book clubs. Oh, and there's actually one other kind of reading I have to do a lot is books for blurbs. I get a lot of requests. I get about 25 requests a month to read a
Wow.
book for a blurb. Out of those, I will agree to about five, and I'll probably give about three blurbs. I'm not one of those people that just, automatically gives a blurb.
hmm
I have to have read the book. I have to have liked the book.
Yeah.
And there had to be nothing in there that would trigger me. And there are some things that do. Like if there's on screen, very, like on page, very deliberately misogynistic violence against women, I'm not
Yeah.
going to read the
Yeah.
book. If descriptive violence against children or pets, not there for it. And unfortunately, some of my colleagues, like some of the horror crowd, they think that because we see screaming women and children in movies so often, that's what you're supposed to do. And to me, I understand the logic in that, you know, threats are big, and for years we've viewed women as weak and children as smaller and therefore helpless. And that kind of thinking is very old-fashioned. It's also creatively lazy.
hmm
It is much more interesting to create a threat so big that any person who encounters that threat in the book is going to be terrified. That's
Yeah.
you want so instead of just going for the cheap shot and the cliched cheap shot at that, you want to build it out to make a more powerful read.
Well, and to me, if it's something involving children, it has to be well crafted and really hit home and not just be there for, the shock value or whatever. And
Right.
the
Gratuitous.
to me the ultimate one of that is Gage Creed in Pet Cemetery,
Yeah.
which is, the kid gets flattened by a semi truck and you're like, "Oh!" When that's in, it's
Yeah.
horrific to even think about, even though it's not that graphic on the page. It's just,
Right.
oh my
Well,
God.
Stephen King he can go graphic as hell, but he's also known for moments where he can underplay it and allow the reader to kind of fill in the blank. My favorite
hmm
example of that was in Salem's Lot. After the antiquarian, who's the servant of the vampire, kidnaps the child and is going to sacrifice the child, you're expecting it to be a graphic moment, and
hmm
the chapter ends with "It became unspeakable." It just
Yeah.
left it there. Now, that leaves the reader the opportunity to fill in the blanks, and we often fill in the blanks much worse than the writer would
Yeah.
have done.
Very true. And here's a segue. Speaking of like big threats and everything, Jenny and I were talking about this, and I was literally texting her as I was reading Red Empire. I texted Jenny and I went, Jenny, I have no idea how anybody gets out of this. Like, I was so impressed with how tense I was at a point in this book. I don't think like and I've been tense in your books before, but something about just how this was all shaping up, especially towards the last 200 or so pages of the book, I
Yeah.
was like, I cannot believe how big and major and all this threat happening. And so, I mean,
And
I
not
want to say,
everybody does get out alive.
I
You know?
know, but just not everybody gets out alive, but just how the situation is one of the ones, because the Joe Ledger series obviously is about this idea of world-ending threats. And in this one, I was like, I don't know how, any of this gets out, and it does. You pulled it out, and I was just like, the relief I felt at the end, despite all the horrible shit that still happens. I was like,
Yeah.
wow, that was impressive.
In terms of the science, I usually have ideas going in about how I want Joe to resolve it, because otherwise you're writing a story about the end of the world.
Yeah.
But the character of Dr. Ronald Coleman, who's in the books, he's a real person. He's one of my best friends, and he's a legit world-class molecular biologist.
Oh wow.
Um,
Okay.
so I mean, he's one of those guys that graduated from high school, I think when he was 11 or something like that. Like super genius, brilliant, hilarious, and a pop culture nerd. He has an unofficial comic he did for fun called Kevin the Drunk Jedi that was hilarious. Um, but he's scary smart, because like if I say, okay, I want to be able to do this, how impossible is my ask? He's like, oh no, we can just do it this way, and he'll
Mm-hmm.
tell me. I mean, so he's a danger to society, is what he is. So we have to soften his stuff to make it something that Joe could actually stop,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a little crazy. I mean,
Wow.
uh, not once have I come out with an idea, and I usually do enough research to be able to ask, to get it pretty far along before I ask. And I keep expecting him to say, "Oh, that's just not possible." And sometimes he'll come back with two or three ways in which it's possible. And it's like, oh shit,
The
that's
world we live
scary
in.
as hell.
I want to
Yeah.
go back to what Matt was saying though, because a little bit different though. When I got to the end, we were talking about this earlier. Is like, so anybody listening, watching, there will be spoilers to the new Joe Ledger Red
Mm.
Empire books in here, because
Not too many,
I
I hope.
don't think we'll
No,
get
not
our
too many.
answers. Like,
Mm.
there's going to be spoilers. So I'm going to throw
Okay.
the first one out there is the fall of Phoenix House. Um, Shocking. Like when there is mayhem there that just heartbreaking.
Mhm.
But by the end of the book, where Matt's talking about how are you going to get out of this, and then when they do, it's an exhale. I ended this book way more stressed out than I have any other Ledger book, because I don't think that was the fall of the Phoenix House. It's kind of the rise of, and there are so many small little things that happen at the end of the book with the introduction of Michael and with Phoenix House going down and the book. Everything when it ends, it feels kind of packaged up as like we
Mhm.
live to see another day. Where does that springboard us into the next story though? Because there are new players on the field,
Yes.
and there's one major one missing now. So I'm a little more stressed in the next book than I was in the end of this one.
Well, the character, and I don't want to spoil this. The character that's missing is gone. That character will
Okay.
not return. If you read the Kagan books, he's in there,
Mm-hmm.
book
Yep.
2 and 3. As far as Michael goes, that's a storyline to pick up a couple books down the road. But the next book, the one I'm writing now, is called Avalon Station, and that is their new home. It's
Oh,
it's
okay.
an oil derrick, former oil derrick, rebuilt and armed this time in the North Sea, and that is the new home of RTI as of this book. That's why it's called Avalon Station. I'm basing it there, and that the new book. Let's just say that it's moving at a brisk pace.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not that Red Empire was slow. I actually one of the challenges there is doing a book with as many flashbacks and having the flashbacks not slow the pace down.
No, I want to talk about the flashbacks. I don't want to give away anything about them, obviously. But I liked the flashbacks because I like how involved in history they are, in world history. And I found myself a lot going, wait a minute, wait. I'm really interested now. And I'd put Red Empire down and I'd pull up some articles and I'd be like, I want to know about this thing he's talking. Who are these people? Now I want to know. And so
Yep.
that even came back to, and not obviously you've talked about this. This is the origin story of Mr. Church. And obviously even there's a story about Church's history that's based on real history that I had never heard before. And
Mhm.
suddenly I'm watching like a half-hour YouTube video about it because I was so interested. So
Awesome.
I think what folks will find with the book, if they're anything like I am, is they're gonna get like interested in a lot of these real world things. And I like that in obviously fiction can be totally fiction, but I love when a fiction book also pulls some real world stuff that can spark my curiosity.
Well, when I was a kid, I think I mentioned last time I was on the couple of my mentors were famous writers, Richard Matheson and Ray Bradbury.
Yep.
And Matheson is the one that gave me one of the greatest bits of advice on how to plot a novel so that it helps the reader suspend disbelief. Use 9 truths to sell one lie. So you build it as much as you can on a scaffold of actual history or actual science or actual whatever. And then, you build it so do your research, make sure it's really a solid structure, and then it's harder for the reader to tell where you've stepped off that platform into the fiction.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of real history. I mean, I did a ton of research for this book. There's a lot of real history in all of those flashbacks. The Crusaders, the tension between the Hospitallers and the Templars,
Hmm.
the betrayal of Pope Clement and Philip, King Philip. All of that's real history. And there's a lot of stuff that's implied in real history that is not verified, like what happened to the Templars' fortunes and so on.
Yes.
And then other things like the Great Fire of London, all of those references are based on actual history. I
Hmm.
just see the Red Order and the Red Knights and um, the Temple family, so to speak, into that history and um, have them there as well. But the history, the setting is real. There's also a very, very good chance that there will be a novel set in the past dealing with one of the identities of a certain character. Um,
Okay.
there's a reference to a character named Ian Kirk, who travels with a man named Fletcher,
Hmm.
and they say they've been together for a few years. That story needs to be written, and I may actually write that. I'm considering like every other year to maybe do a John Temple story of one kind.
Yeah, that would be really like I said, I'm reading a book right now. It's one that hasn't come out yet. It's another one I'm reviewing for here on Atomic Geekdom, but it's another one of those ones that's, and Jenny knows which book I'm talking about. It goes back into the past, and so I'm getting a real taste for historical fiction between what you did there in Red Empire and this other book I'm reading now, where I'm like, oh, now I'm really interested in this historical like sci-fi fantasy kind of thing. It's capturing my imagination quite a bit.
And that's great. Yeah, I love putting real world stuff in. I love doing the historical research, and I love taking historical mysteries and extrapolating out from them. Like if we know that there's something that's one of those mysteries in history, you can
Mhm.
look at them, and there's so many open doors for writers to go in and tell the story because we may never solve that mystery.
Right.
We can solve it in fiction, and that makes it a lot of fun to do. So I can see myself doing some historical action fiction. Kind of like I don't know if you ever read the Richard Sharp novels by Bernard Cornwell.
No.
They did a series of movies, like maybe 10 movies with Sean Bean, TV movies about a rifleman
Richard
during
Sharp.
the Napoleonic Wars. It's Sharp with an E on the end.
Yep, I see it right here. I was looking it up so that I can have it for later because now
Sharp's
I'm
Rifles, even though there are books that are prequels to the series, start with Sharp's Rifles. That's the best book, and
okay.
it's an incredible series of books written by Bernard Cornwell, and What he does kind of what I do. He takes real history and then finds a way to insert his character in there so the character is pivotal without changing anything of,
Mm.
of real
Hmm.
historical merit. And I was in an anthology last year that kind of did a similar thing. My friend Henry Hertz did an anthology as editor called Combat Monsters, where every story was a real battle in World War II,
Oh.
but we each had to take and add our element of supernatural or whatever to it, add a monster to it. I did a werewolf
Oh.
story set in Italy, a key
Hmm.
battle there, and it's the Deacon. It's a Mr. Church story,
Yeah.
set in 1944,
Ah, it's so cool.
and the character that he's with, let's just say, is uh, interesting. She's a an ancestor of my Sam Hunter character, the grandmother of my character Sam Hunter.
Okay.
Sam Hunter being a Ben and Dante, a type of werewolf that fights evil. It's part of actual European folklore. There was a whole group of people claimed to be werewolves who
Hmm.
fought evil. And I have
Wow.
my series, and that character Sam Hunter did a cameo in Burn to Shine. He was one of the werewolves in that story.
Okay. Oh, that's right. That's right. Yes, yes, yes. I remember now. Okay.
He's a
That's
Very
character
cool.
I've only
Jenny,
ever
what?
used before in
Oh,
short stories, but he's been in a bunch of short stories. There's a whole collection of his short stories called Beneath the Skin, the Sam Hunter case files, and it's fun because when
mhm,
that
I have that.
character,
Yep.
yeah, when that
Yep.
character takes on a client, he essentially makes them part of his pack, and wolves will do anything to protect their pack. So,
there's how
Mm.
do you prepare of like how characters can intermix into your other stories and such? Because there are those overlaps. Like Monk will show up in a story, Church will show up in other writers' stories, and
yeah.
how do you keep control of your character development with that? And how do you base the story where they're a subtle intro?
Well, first off, it was there's a reason I do all that. In 2007, I'd gone to the Edgar Awards, the Mystery Awards, with one of my publishers, and it was the year that Stephen King was being inducted as the Grandmaster. And I sat at his table for about an hour, and we talked. We had a great talk. And one of the things we talked about, one of the things he asked, because this was 2007, my second book was just about to come out, so it was the second in my Pine Deep trilogy. So that's all I was known for,
Mhm.
was those books. And I said, I don't know. Probably my next book's going to be a thriller, but I don't know. It's before I even had the idea for Patient Zero. I just didn't know where I was going yet. But I knew I wasn't going to stay in one zone. And he said, do this. Take characters, have them wander in and out of each of the stories, no matter where they are, when they are. Don't make it that people have to have read the story that's characters from. Introduce the character as if it's being introduced in this book. That way, if the readers who follow everything, the constant readers, he calls them, will be in on it, and they'll like that,
Yes.
the fact that it's all one world. And people who don't know that won't care, or if they do find out it's a character from another book, they may go find, they may read that other book. So I started doing that early on. I originally started it with celebrities. In Bad Moon Rising, I had some of my horror industry celebrity friends in there. I had James Gunn, because he wrote the screenplay for my favorite zombie movie of all time, Dawn of the Dead. He did the unrated director's cut of Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead. That's
Great movie.
brilliant. I had Ken Faree, who starred in the original Dawn of the Dead, Brink Stevens and Debbie Rochon, who were Scream Queens, a bunch of others. They're all in that book. So then I moved into other books and I just started having characters wander in and out. And I do plan, like when I sit down to outline a book, I often think, well, do any of my other characters deserve or a walk on, or would the book benefit from a walk on? And if yes, and often yes, because I also know the personalities of those characters, so I know how to do them. I then start thinking about putting them in there. A good example of that is I'm doing a series called The Sleeper's War. I did the first book with my friend Weston Oakes, but he died shortly after the book came out. And I've got two more books under contract in that series to write. So when
Yes.
I was writing the second one a few months ago, I decided to expand that world a little bit since I don't have any of Wes's input on books two and three. I had to replot them myself. And it's set 400 years from now, and there's a character named John Temple in there. and he's has a group of people fighting the war because the war is the war.
Mm.
And so he's in
And he
that
is
story.
in Red Empire.
Yes. And he'll be
And
showing up more often, but John Temple is a very key name in my personal cosmology here. So I plan how to use them. I don't want to overuse them, but I want to use them where they would likely be. So if I'm setting a story in Pine Deep, there are a lot of characters who are in and around Pine Deep. Sam Hunter's in Philadelphia, Mike Crow and Val and Monk all live in Pine Deep. So if I'm going to have a story set in Pine Deep, like Burn to Shine was, it makes sense for them to be involved in the game. And I also have writer
Mm.
friends who allow me to take their characters and have them do walk-ons. In Cave 13, we had Repairman Jack from F. Paul Wilson, his whole
Yep.
series of brilliant Repairman Jack novels. In Relentless, we had Hap and Leonard, Joe Langelo's characters. We also
Happen
had
Leonard.
yeah, and if you've ever read
Yes.
any of the John D. MacDonald, Travis McGee novels, his daughter is the veterinarian on the boat Joe takes Ghost to. That you have to be a really deep John D. MacDonald fan to know that. So if you like, I've met like 20 people total who recognized Gene McGee as that character, and it's
Mhm.
kind of fun when you do that. So when people use my characters in other stories, like Peter Clines will throw and Scott Sigler will both throw Mr. Church in or some reference to that in there, they usually tell me what they're going to do. And then I say, run with it. And I'm used to it from the two anthologies we've done of Joe Ledger, Joe Ledger Unstoppable and Joe Ledger Unbreakable, where I have a bunch of writer friends write Joe Ledger stories. And I'll
Right.
when they turn the stories in, of course, I'll read them for continuity, but I rarely change what they do because it's their story, and I don't want to be precious about my stuff. But it's fun to see how they interpret different characters.
do you have any more of those on the horizon? Because I know the last few have had some heavy hitters in it. I mean, the Ray Porter story is phenomenal.
Yeah, the
Um,
Aunt Sally story is heartbreaking.
it's so good. But seeing it through another eye, because there's writing styles that you pick up from authors, and just having the tone be a little bit different, but it's a character that you know and you love.
Oh yeah,
It's they're a gem of a read.
They
Absolutely.
are like one of my favorites is Scott Sigler's Little Murder Machine, which is all about Joe's cat Cobbler saving Ghost from rat drones sent by enemies of Joe Ledger. And it's
Yep.
hilarious, laugh out loud story. That cat, by the way, Cobbler, was my cat. I had him for 21 years before he passed. So when he
Oh,
died, I gave him to
wow.
Joe, so he would always be around. Joe would always have Cobbler. And Scott, who is as much of an animal lover as I am, his first thing was, "Oh, I've got to do a Cobbler story." Steve Alton did stories. Kevin Anderson, Kevin Eichenberg. There's tons of people who have done Joe Ledger stories, and their voices are completely different from mine. They didn't try to write like me, which I'm very happy about. They tried to write like them, and they did that.
Mhm.
And it just shows how useful the world is. And actually, those anthologies were appreciated by Chad Stahelski, the director of John Wick, who's going to be, who's developing Joe Ledger for TV, because it gave him an idea of how other writers would interpret the character, and he's got to eventually put together a writer's room for the TV show.
Of that. Do you have
Ah.
has there been any progress on timing and such for that series?
Right now, everything is on hold because Chad is filming Highlander in England right now with Henry Cavill and
Oh,
Paul.
that's right.
That was supposed to be shot the end of last year, but Henry hurt his Achilles tendon. So it got pushed to this year, and they're filming it now.
Mhm.
And so everything got pushed back. So once principal photography is done and Chad comes back to the States, back to LA, he and I will get back together and start that process again of getting um, the Joe Ledger series up and running. In the meantime, I'm working on a couple of non-disclosure agreement John Wick projects that I can't
Yep.
describe, but
Yep.
I'm working
That's,
Can't
on
yep.
wait
those
for the action.
Very
and
cool, though. Very
and
cool.
so that's fun. And I'm doing a couple other projects that Chad and possibly even Keanu might be involved in that are not John Wick or Joe Ledger involved. It's something else that that we
Just something else. Very
will be
cool.
talking about.
Well,
Well,
I have a tie-in. going back to Red Empire, and then also things that branch out from it. What was great about Red Empire is the addition of so many of the other teams that we have encountered
Yep.
throughout the different, whether it be
Mhm.
DMS or RTI. They're popping up. There's characters that we get glimpses at because of other missions. Can you give us early Christmas present and tell us that you're writing a Wild Hunt story? Because I am like all about my toy
We were,
boys
yeah,
or
we were
my
talking.
boy toys, and I just every scene in this book with the Wild Hunt, I'm just like, I need more.
We were talking
Yeah.
about the Wild Hunt earlier, and yeah, that was another one of my favorite parts is like seeing toys on this side of the divide where he's fighting like not just out doing good, the way we've seen him doing good in the corporate kind of nonprofit
Free tech.
world, but like actually getting himself out into the field and doing his fighting thing. I was like,
Getting
this
the
is
blades
fun.
out
This
again.
is,
I'm like,
yep.
yeah.
Yeah, Toys is happier now than he was when he was running Free Tech. And there will be I mean, I'll be doing a couple of Wild Hunt short stories to kind of test drive some of the characters because a lot of his guys have a very short shelf life, as we have seen.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They're eventually settled down to a core team, and in Avalon Station, we'll see what that core team is going to be like because that team will be essentially his top and bunny, you know.
Yeah.
And that's going to move forward. But they have a fairly good role in Avalon Station. Even Sam Amora comes back to Avalon for Avalon Station because, I mean, and this is I've already talked about this openly, so it's going to be on the jacket text of the book, so it's not a surprise. But the book starts off with Junie Flynn and Helmut Deacon, who is the kid from Dragon
Mhm.
Factory, who is now Church's adopted son. They are both kidnapped and brutalized, and they're being held hostage. And Joe and Church call in everyone. Let's go get them back. And
Yeah.
the
Nice.
team unfortunately, the team that has them are not just a team of private military contractors. They are like 5 levels up in tech.
Ooh.
So it deals with cybernetics, it deals with exoskeletons, it deals with all the different cyber tech that they're creating for soldiers, and also the combat robots that we talked about in Predator One, or Dogs of War rather, which now those things are on the commercial market. You can go buy a robot dog from Boston Dynamics.
Yeah.
You can actually buy one with a flamethrower. I'm not joking.
I was telling Matt this just now of like I try to be informed with what's going on in the world, but there are times I have to take a step back because when those videos came out with the dogs, I'm like, this isn't a ledger book and a Black Mirror episode, and I don't want any of them in real life, so I'm taking a step back right now.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we got them.
Mhm.
And they're
Terrifying.
getting faster and quieter. The Chinese have created software to teach robots how to do kung fu. I don't know if you've seen that video.
I
That's
don't think
scary.
I have. That's scary.
Has no one watched any of the Skynet movies?
I know.
This does not, and they have a new type of robot now. It's an AI powered robot that changes shape. It
Oh
conforms.
boy, Transformers.
I just think
No,
about every time that
Terminator 2. It's
Terminator
Terminator
2.
2.
Yep.
I every AI personality they put on the internet and social media, it takes them less and less time to be racist like assholes.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm like, let's not do this.
One of the
If learning software copies us and it turns out to be racist and homicidal, people should take that as a cautionary note. We've been
yeah.
writing cautionary novels about this for 50 years.
Yeah,
Colossus the Forbin Project, Demon Seed. I mean, this goes on and on.
it's terrifying.
Terminator, and yet we seem to be racing toward that as if that is the prize we're trying to win. It's like,
Yeah. It's
um,
wild.
Well,
One
and
of the
I
things
mean, it's everything now too. Like, it's kind of a poignant question here as well, because with everything with AI and with Chat GPT, all of that, like I work, aside from my geeky stuff, I work in the entertainment business doing key art. So we are always
Mhm.
making movie posters, things
mhm,
of that nature. And a lot of agencies now are recruiting for people that can do the AI prompts,
yep,
which has a huge divide in the art field because you're like, that's not art.
that's
You
not
put
art.
in a prompt.
Nope.
How how do you see that affecting like novels coming out now? Because there are a lot of things that are being um I did a review of a novel that you could tell like they used AI to write some of their paragraphs and it just
It,
it turns you off. Like how do you counter that in the
Well,
field?
I'm actually part of that lawsuit against Anthropic. I mean, they used over 100 of my books to help train ChatGPT and other things. So they're going to have to pay me, but still, you know,
Still gross.
and still without permission, and it's gross. And Audible has switched to using a lot of virtual voice for. I don't know anyone who is crazy enough to sit and listen for hours to virtual voice. It is soulless.
No, it is. Yeah, it's horrible.
I am not in any way a fan of AI.
No.
Um,
Same.
I mean, AI should. I mean, we should have stopped with CGI. That was great. We can do anything with CGI, but there are people at the controls of that.
Mhm.
AI is dangerous, and it will continue to be dangerous. Now, there may be a bubble. People talk about the AI bubble. If it bursts, it'll collapse back on itself. But I think businesses are going to find ways to keep using it because it allows them to do work on the cheap and cut real people out. So
Well,
you're not
there
only paying no fees, you're not paying benefits or anything.
That's
I
exactly it.
I follow a lot of stuff in medical because I'm an odd case. I've got papers written about me. And some of the things that AI can do with medical, where they can break down like DNAs and just like especially with the immune system, we haven't been able to physically do with our brains. So like it's giving us new patterns that we wouldn't have recognized, which I'm like, let's use it for that. Let's
Yeah.
not use it to make buff men tell us how Tai Chi is going to make us lose 45 pounds in a
Good
day.
Lord, yeah. Which, by the way, it won't do.
Yeah.
Uh, eh, there's a lot of issues with it. I mean, I understand the uses of it in research because you can collate research at a much faster rate to a much greater degree, as long as there are guardrails on it.
Right.
And it's not generative, it's tabulative. If you want to give it, 3,000 medical reports and have it collate that stuff in 45 seconds, that's great. That'll save lives. But I don't want to go to an AI doctor.
No.
Exactly, yeah.
You know,
It's
I don't
kind of like,
mind.
I mean, I'll give you praise for this. My love for AI would be something like Mind Reader, where there's still a bug somewhere that
Yeah.
is like helping keep it on its tracks,
Well,
and
it's funny because within the Joe Ledger series, Bug has Mind Reader. Then he got Mind Reader Q1, which makes it more. And then he got Calpurnia, which was AI. And in that book, I think was it Dogs of War? I forget which book it was where
Hmm.
uh, it takes over. The Calpurnia rebels and then contacts Bug. I forget which of the books it was on that. But the point is, Bug. I introduced it to the Joe Ledger books and then had Bug stop using it. And the reason is because that's about when I start seeing how bad AI could be, and I pulled it. And there's a scene in the current Ledger novel that I wrote a couple of weeks ago, where he is trying to find a way to build the guardrails around Calpurnia, but because it was allowed to run into full consciousness, he doesn't know how to do it. He might have to scrap it and rebuild it. But he'd rather not use a thinking computer that only has software for morals, but that isn't the same as having moral
having morals. Yeah,
or
Yeah.
restraint or limitations. But
crazy.
One of
Well,
the things that Jenny and I were discussing, and as you're talking about not remembering which novel certain things happened in and everything like that, and how there are all these characters, we were wondering, there's been the Joe Ledger Companion Volume 1, but obviously there's been several books since then. And, will there maybe be a Joe Ledger Companion Volume 2 so that, like,
yeah,
for example, I know in Red Empire there were a couple things that you referenced back to that I went, kind of wish I had reread that book because now I can't remember what he's talking about, which is, in a long going series, you'll have those things. It's not uncommon, but that's why I like the companion.
well, if we actually get the TV series from development to production, I'm going to have to write a new one anyway because it's more or less going to be the story Bible for the show.
Okay.
Because, for example, when I was talking to Chad, one of our conversations we were talking about Bug, and he was saying, "Oh yeah, we're gonna take elements from different stories and move them around, of course, because we're probably only going to get 5 years on TV, because that's about what a show gets these days, about 5 years."
Yeah.
And he said, "We'll put Bug in the first season." I'm like, "Well, Bug's already in the first book," and he says, "No, he's not." And it's been a long time since I reread Patient Zero and Dragon Factory. Bug doesn't come in till King of Plagues. In my
That's
head,
right,
he's
he
been there
doesn't.
all
He's
along,
been
but he
there
was not in
forever.
the first two books. Doctor Who was kind of serving both the Doctor and Bug's roles to a degree. I didn't even mention who the guy in the chair was, but it turned out to be Bug, and it was book three, and that surprised me, and I wrote the damn thing. But
Yeah.
also, you figure I'm writing close to 1 million words a year for publication.
Hmm.
I can't remember everything.
No, of
Like last
course.
year, I did 958,000 words for publication.
Wow.
And I've had 2 years where I've crossed the million line. So yeah, and I'm on my 56th novel in 20 years, plus 200 short stories, all those comics and everything else. So I like the reference material too.
Well,
Mm.
that was, I mean, even as a reader, it's like we read so much. There's so much out there now, like between TV shows, stuff like that. I find sometimes like things get overlapped or you start to assume things. Um, I always get Dogs of War and Kill Switch mixed up every time. And
Yep.
I'll be like, I love this book. This happens. And they're like, that's not in that book. And I'm like, are you sure?
Yeah, I'm that way with Dogs of War and Predator One because they're both tech oriented, and I forget which tech is in which.
Hmm.
Um,
Which one had the drones,
that's
but
Predator
which
One.
one
Yeah.
had the
The robots is Dogs of War, but there are other elements of the computer stuff in both that so that's one of the reasons also I re-listened to, some of the Ledger
Yeah.
books. Like because robotics are going to play such a big role in this book, I'll be listening to Dogs of War again because I really need to get back into the robotics thing and to see how much has changed since I wrote that book, which is a lot of stuff has changed in the real world in robotics, the fields of robotics.
Hmm.
And it's going to make for some interesting stuff. Almost nothing in the tech part of this book is science fiction, and it's going to all read like science fiction,
Oh,
like
wow.
drugs that can keep somebody up and active for 48 or 72 hours, implants that give you enhanced strength, exoskeletons that basically do for a person what that giant rig in Aliens did
Hmm.
but we have that tech. Some of it is in application, some of it's being used, some of it's in tests, and some of it's still in development, but it's all real tech. So that's going to be fun in incorporating that. And then I'll probably put an author's note in there saying that this is all real tech.
Wow. Unbelievable. So, we know you've got a lot going on. We don't want to hold you super long, but one of the other things I'm curious about is, you're talking about you're already working on the next Joe Ledger book, and you've mentioned something about, well, that's something for a couple books down the road. When you sit and think about these stories, how many stories down the road are you thinking? Because, lots of authors are either, some of them are, well, this is all artists, I guess. Even filmmakers are like only, Christopher Nolan is famously, he'll say as a director, I'm working on this movie right now, and this
Yeah.
is all I care about right now. And, then you have some people who are like, I know what sounds like Chad that you're working with knows what his next 4 projects are going to
Yep.
be, kind of
Yep.
thing. How many stories down the road do you tend to think?
Well, in the Ledger series, I've got 27 novels outlined that I
Oh,
haven't
wow.
written yet. Now,
Okay.
some of them I probably may never write. There's an idea I had. Sometimes the outlines are very short,
Hmm.
and there are some that are complex. Avalon Station is a chase and rescue novel.
Hmm.
The next one is Species Unknown, which deals with forced evolution of underwater creatures and some unexpected natural evolution of underwater creatures.
Oh.
we
Um,
finally get Cthulhu.
no, no, well, we have Cthulhu and Killswitch.
I know.
Um,
Like, let's
but
get him
no, it's
back.
it's it's more like trying to turn um, a certain group of soldiers into water breathing creatures,
Oh, okay.
which is something that both DARPA and other countries' advanced research projects groups have looked into, if not already working on. And when I was talking to some of the DARPA guys, I threw that idea out there, and they're like, "Yeah, we looked into that," and that was exactly as much of the conversations they were willing to have.
Oh boy.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ooh.
So So that's going to be Species Unknown, and then beyond that, I think I want to do one. I have never done a story where Joe and Ghost are completely isolated, no comms, no nothing, just out in a wilderness, isolated. I would love to write one of those. I started one, but it became a short story. There's an anthology coming out called Hard Country, and it's a modern different stories for different writers. I wrote a story where Joe and Ghost are in the Bob Marshall Wilderness in Montana. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it. Known colloquially as
Lewistown, Montana girl right here.
okay, there we go. So it's known as the Bob. So
Okay.
I have Joe lost in the Bob in one story and coming up, and I liked the isolation because he has no one he can call, so he has to do it himself. So it probably won't be the entire book, but it would be neat if there was like if Top Bunny and the other teams were handling one problem while another group's looking for Joe, and then Joe was handling his own problem alone. That would be kind of a cool book. And so that's likely to be the one after Species Unknown, but I got a whole bunch lined up.
Wow.
How
And
do you how do
more
you keep
ideas come up all the time.
how do you keep track of like age and timeline? Like I
I
feel like
ignore it
Ghost is
largely.
gotta be as old as my Shepherd Coco. Like Ghost gotta be pushing 9 now, but
Well,
he's probably
here's
what, 4? Like
he's about five now. Joe has been he was in his early 30s now, and he's his mid 30s. But that's as close as I get to it, because for me, the novel series. I mean, it's not like each adventure takes place in a separate year. A lot of times, I'll reference it a few months ago, and so Cave
Hmm.
13 might have been last year, but Burn to Shine was a couple of months ago, and that makes it a little easier. It's kind of the Marvel Comics aging
I was
process.
gonna say comic logic
Yeah,
aging.
well, you figure in Fantastic Four, Franklin Richards was born in 1968. He's only 10 years younger than I am.
Yeah.
I was born in 58. So in the comics, he's still five. How long was Spider-Man in high school? How long was he in 4 years of
Yep.
college? So
Dick Grayson went from like 12 to 25 and has been 25 ever since.
yeah, since 1934, or
Yep.
whatever that Batman started. You can't have your characters age out that easily. Now, it would be interesting to do a story where characters aged out in real time and were replaced. The problem
Yeah.
there is fans often glom onto one or more series characters, and they don't want them to age out.
Yeah.
Like Top should have retired quite a long time ago,
Yep.
and he's still in the game. And I've met a couple of Spec Ops guys who were in their, middle to late 40s, but there aren't that many of them.
Right.
And Bunny is still a young man, even though he's been around for a while. He was 26, or I think he was 26 when Patient Zero happened.
It's kind of like an article I saw, or not an article, but it was a thing not that long ago that said, I'm in my late 30s. I'm 38 years old, and it said
bless your
something about
heart.
Homer Simpson technically is my age,
Yeah, yeah,
and currently Homer Simpson, graduated high school around the time I graduated high school, and but he hasn't always been, from graduated, because Homer Simpson's been around since what, the late 80s. So
yeah,
originally Homer Simpson, graduated high school sometime in the, late 60s,
yep.
early 70s. So
It is a little crazy. Now, as far as Ghost goes, I've laid the groundwork for being able to age Ghost out if I want to, in that he got jiggy with Banshee, who is the Irish wolfhound Cersei gave, or Lilith, Violin gave to Cersei. And I've mentioned that a couple of his
his
offspring are in
puppies.
training to be combat dogs now.
Hmm.
If I wanted Ghost to ever retire, his replacement would be one of his offspring who is half white shepherd and half Irish wolfhound. So it'd be closer to 180 pounds of attitude.
Ooh.
Um, but we'll see. I've got a lot of people who, keep sending me those, if you kill Ghost, we riot sort of things. So
Yeah,
right now, Ghost has plot armor.
people get very attached to the dogs.
They do. I get hate mail for Grace Cortland. I get hate mail for Tom
Mm.
Amora and for John Smith, the sniper, and a bunch of other characters. I get a lot of hate mail from people
Yeah.
who are very pissed off at me that I killed the characters. But some of those characters, like Grace, was originally scripted, originally outlined, she was going to die in patient zero. There was a
Yeah.
scene where Joe was contemplating killing her to keep her from being eaten and turned into a zombie.
Yeah.
And I almost wrote that scene, but I said, nah, I'd rather her have a more dignified and more heroic end. So I brought her into book two. But, I wouldn't have her. I knew that when Joe fell in love with her, it was a doomed love. I wanted
Right.
that emotional note for him
Yeah.
to carry that weight forward into future books.
And I think people that write you hate mail, which number one is silly. Don't write people hate mail. But number two, they just don't like there has to be some kind of stakes. And I'll give you a prime example. Scream 7 came out recently, and for all the love of Courtney Cox, like at the end of Scream 6, Gail Weathers just should have been dead. She was stabbed 6 ways to Sunday and like
Yeah.
still came out of that movie. And I was like, that's just silly at this
I
point.
think it's
So,
emotion too. Like
yeah.
there have been many things that I've watched that when I get done with it, I'm like, you mother, and I'm like, I'm ready to go. But you've got to take a step back, right? Come
Yep.
on, people,
Yeah.
take a
Yeah.
step back.
So,
Um, Grace is an interesting little additive I want to ask before we start wrapping this up is speaking of heritage, Grace has more family. How are you approaching that? Because Grace was such an amazing character in those early books to
Uh,
have family showing up this
there,
late
there,
into the
there is
RTI.
emotional conflict on the part of Joe and the other people in the group, and that
yes.
it comes up in conversations a bit in Red Empire, but a lot more in Avalon Station, because Joe's
Mhm.
dealing with her more actively as the new COO of RTI, and it's fun because I originally planned to put Claire Cortland in the story in Deep Silence
Okay.
because of Andy having a stroke. I was going to have her already working with RTI with DMS, and when I transitioned to the RTI, she was going to come along as the new COO. But I decided to wait, and I wanted a more adversarial person, so I gave Joe Scott, who is based on a professor I had once, who he is a good, decent human being that I still disliked intensely.
Yep.
And you feel weird about disliking someone who is inarguably a good person. It's just the chemistry is completely off.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
And, and
I get what you mean, because one of the stories my dad would tell growing up is he goes, I got to college and I had a math class that I had a professor come in and he would just start writing on the board and he wouldn't turn around and he would just say, if you can't keep up, you're not going to pass this class. And my dad would tell me that story when I was struggling in school, he'd be like, let me tell you, he goes, I got through that. And I said to this professor, I want to keep up. I want to keep going with this class. Like, what can I do? And he goes, that guy, like, I bumped up against him all the time because he wouldn't even turn and face the class. He would
yeah.
just stand there and go. So
Well, I had a journalism professor who I hated for years. Now he's a personal saint in my pantheon because of him, I'm as fast as I am now as a writer. Every Friday, we'd come into class, and I had him for 3 different classes during the time I was in college. And Friday, he would he'd come in, and there'd be a topic on the board. And at ours, this is 1976. So on our desk would be a typewriter, not a computer,
Mhm.
10 sheets of paper. Topic on the board, he said, I need 2,000 words. You have 90 minutes. It's pass, fail, go. And then he would put on a vinyl album of car crashes and babies crying and phones ringing. And he would turn it all the way up to 11. And that was every Friday.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that like psychological torture though?
Yes, yes. But he said if an editor sends you to a crime scene or a fire or something, and there's fire and there's
Good
lights and
point,
there's
though.
people, you got to be able to keep your cool and call it in. And like I said, I hated him at the time. It took me a while to see the value of it. And with my writing career, I'm writing 4 to 5 novels a year, plus short stories, plus comics. I now see the value of it because I don't spend time mythologizing and I don't spend time getting ready to write. I sit down and I start working,
Mhm.
and I acquire whatever information I need along the way, and I keep the process moving. And it's worked really well for me. It continues to work really well for me, and I'll continue to use it. And John Hayes, who, like I said, I originally would love to have driven a stake through his heart because that's what you do with vampires. I wish he was still alive because I would like to take him out for very expensive dinners and thank him.
Wow. Awesome. Well, Jenny, I don't have anything else because
Oh,
I don't want to talk, you mentioned I don't want to get too deep into the book simply because I don't want to give anything else very exciting away, but I always appreciate Jonathan you being here and everybody, if you're keeping up on the Joe Ledger series, go out and get Red Empire. Go out and get Red Empire. Go out and get Red Empire. It's like I said, the tension I felt, especially right near the end of this book, I was unbelievable. And if you're anything like me, you'll get to learn some fun stuff about real world history along the way because you'll go, I want to know about that person and that person and that person and that person and that event that he's talking about. So
And
yeah.
and I just want to, if you don't mind, a quick plug too.
sure, of course.
It's going to be a really busy release year for me. So
Mhm.
Red Empire starts the year off. Next up in April is going to be next month. It's going to be Sleeper's War 2, the second book in that series where the character John Temple will be in the future.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize it was that. I guess well, I have I read the first one yet? I don't
I
think
don't
I
know.
have.
It's
Wow,
it's
that's
a
one of the only
really
ones by
thick
you.
book. It's a really thick
Okay.
book.
Okay.
A race of alien birds, and
Hmm.
it's a. I really enjoyed writing the book. I'll be starting the third one soon, so that comes out. That's called Savage Dreams is the
Hmm.
second one coming out. Sleepers War. Then we have Bewilderness coming out in May, I think, which is I did an original serialized audio novel
Hmm.
for Audible 5, 6 years ago, and there was no print or ebook version of it. So Wordfire Press, Kevin Anderson's press, is putting out the print and ebook version of it.
Oh, cool.
And then we jump forward to October, and I have the final book in the Necrotech trilogy, Ghosts of the Void. So all of those books are coming out this year, and it's going to be a busy, busy, busy year. And also a kaiju anthology I'm co-editing called Big Bad Book of Kaiju.
Oh, I can't wait. By the way, we don't talk about these very much just because it's hard because you're only one person on the anthology. I love all the anthologies that are coming out of all these different things. I think the short story is something of a lost art. There aren't very many, people working. And so I love that you're contributing to all these anthologies and that all these other writers are contributing to these anthologies. I
Oh,
think they're worthwhile.
it's great. And the short story, I mean, I was one of those people that was reluctant to even try short stories.
Hmm.
I was a novelist in my head, but now I've written 205, I think.
Wow.
And I've got another 27 I owe short stories too that are calendared over this year. I love the short story form, and I've got a ton of short story collections out. I had a magazine, Weird Tales. I love short stories because there's a lot of experimental stuff you can do in short stories that you really can't get away with in a novel.
Hmm.
You can be a lot more experimental, take a lot more creative risks, and also you can test drive characters in short stories and then have them show up in
Hmm.
novels, like Monk Addison.
Well, plus the other thing with short stories that I really appreciate is that there are lots of good ideas in short stories and people that have ideas that aren't novel length. Like there's just
Yeah.
some things that like I've certainly read books where I've been like, man, this would have made a great novella or a novella where I go, it still might be a little bit too long. Maybe that
Yeah.
could have been a great like 30-page story, or something like that. So,
Yeah, I mean, so some of like Casco Amontillado and Telltale Heart by Poe, neither of them would have made a good novel. Made
no.
excellent short stories.
Yep.
Almost all of the M.R. James ghost stories were perfect in their length, but there would have just been so much padding. Even when they adapted them to an hour long, ghost story for Christmas, which the BBC does every year,
Hmm.
even padding them out to an hour makes them too long because it
Right.
should have been a half an hour episode of, say, something like The Twilight Zone. It would have been
I was
perfect.
gonna say, I was about to say, one of my favorite things in the entire world, not short story collection, in the traditional sense, but TV short story for the Twilight Zone.
Twilight
Man,
Zone, Night
I just
Gallery, and Outer Limits were my three favorite
yep,
shows when I was a kid.
I just
yep.
had a whole conversation with somebody about, how they re-released the Twilight Zone recently. I think Jordan Peele was behind
Yep,
it.
it was his
Yep.
the third incarnation of Twilight Zone.
He
Yeah.
concepts behind each of those stories were great, and I couldn't get into them. And I think the reason
They were
was
all too.
one was an hour long.
They were
Like
all an
I
hour
wanted
long.
to
Yeah.
go in, I wanted them to get to the point, and I wanted it to be creepy and cool.
Yep.
Mhm.
I lost interest towards the last like 20 minutes, you know.
Yep. And that is one of the problems when adapting. Half-hour format really works for short story anthology shows.
Yep.
And we tried to sell a half-hour anthology thing based on the anthology George Romero and I did together, Nights of the Living Dead, but they want an hour-long television, and it doesn't work in hour-long formats. So,
No.
As somebody that consumes way too much entertainment, I appreciate a good half an hour long series.
me too. Me too.
I
That's why
also
one of my
like,
favorite zombie shows was Black Summer. Each
oh,
episode is like 22 minutes, and it's like,
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
oh, there are 2 seasons of it. It is a breathless, horrific take on the zombie apocalypse.
Oh,
I forget what network it's on,
I'll
and
find it.
it's the same guy who created created Z Nation, but unlike Z Nation, which was comedic, this is not.
I
And
know what I'm doing
each
tonight.
season has a completely different tone to it, but there's a couple central characters that are the through characters on it. It's
Mhm.
freaking awesome, but man, it's powerful.
I
Awesome.
appreciate a long book, especially if I'm really into the characters and such. But I'm gonna give you a huge compliment from my perspective that other people may not agree with. I love that your chapters are short, like 3 to 4 pages. You know, if they go
Yep.
like 7 pages, it's still only 7 pages. I'm a very distracted person, and being able to get through an entire subset and then get distracted and come back and pick back up,
Mhm.
and the juxtaposition of like in the new book, history to modern day, and then you go back to history and then you're in modern day. My brain is just like, all right, I get another chapter while I wait for this file to download.
Yeah, and
Woohoo!
it makes me happy to write it that way too. I like most people living in the 21st century have developed cultural ADD. You know,
Mhm.
it's not genetic, it's cultural, but I want to get to it right now. And I grew up, one of the things I grew up reading, and I know we're running it late, but one of the things I grew up reading were the reprints of all the pulp novels, Doc Savage and The Shadow and all that, which
Yeah.
were all reprinted in the 60s and 70s, and they're very short chapters. The novels are only 65,000 words. And you can tell they were written fast and designed to be read fast, and I love that. And so I apply that to my novels, and it also makes the writing fun because no chapter is going to bog me down writing it. I mean, you can see like starts here, ends there, you
Yep.
Yep.
know, and that makes it fun. It keeps the pace going, which is important because it's not a short novel.
Yeah.
No.
Well, and it
Well,
gives you that like I like having bookends of something, so I don't like stopping a page where like I have to like put my bookmark sideways to know what line I ended on.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
want to put my bookmark in and go, all right, I'm starting the next chapter.
And the last thing I'll say about that is Dan Brown started us all on that course with Da Vinci Code because most
mm,
thrillers used to have really long paragraphs. And he got so tired of people complaining that, they were reading the book in bed and they fell asleep in the middle of a chapter. Well, you're reading it in
mhm.
bed to fall asleep. Um,
Yeah.
but if the chapter's short, you can get to the end of that chapter, put the bookmark in, and you want to get right back to it next day.
Yep.
That was his secret formula, and it made that book blow up. And it's been
Awesome.
copied so heavily since.
It works out great. So, yes, again, thank you again, Jonathan. Always good. Everybody, Red Empire and all the other books Jonathan plugged, which is very exciting. It's such a busy year and it's going to be great. I can't wait to be reading everything, everything, everything.
Well, I
So,
hope you guys enjoy it. I hope that everybody watching this takes a look at it and go out there and read more books.
yes, for sure.
All right. Thanks for having me back on. I really appreciate it. I love you
Yes, of
guys.
course.
And
Thanks
catch
so
up.
much.
Yeah, I want to go back and get Joe Ledger out of a real pickle I left him
Yes, take care and make
in.
sure he gets out okay.
You will. I'll talk to you guys
Okay.
later.
Yep,
Bye.
bye.
So much. Take care.